On the ceiling of an ancient cave, there's a painting that's lasted for 14 centuries. It shows a sun god riding a chariot pulled by white horses, with two winged angels beside him, and above them, wind gods swirling in the sky. But what's even stranger is this. Even though this image looks more like the myths of India, Greece, and Achaemenid Persia, like the sun god Apollo in Greece, the sun god Surya in India, or the sun god Mithra in ancient Zoroastrian Persia. But this painting is actually above the head of a Buddha statue in Afghanistan. So the question is, what was this sun god doing in Afghanistan? Why was it depicted in a Buddhist temple? Well, in this episode, that's exactly what we're going to talk about. So stay with me until the end of this video as we uncover this mystery. Afghanistan has been a crossroads where different cultures and religions met, including Buddhism, Zoroastrianism, Greco-Roman art, and ancient Indian and Iranian beliefs. So, in India and the Buddhist temples of the region, you can find a variety of cultural and religious symbols and elements that were inspired by other cultures and religions. In fact, the presence of the sun god symbol in a Buddhist temple is not strange at all. Rather, it's a sign of the cultural and religious blending of past eras. So, let's break this down a bit more. Bamiyan is a historic and incredibly beautiful valley in central Afghanistan that has served as a cultural crossroads for centuries. This valley is located in the middle of the Hindu Kush mountain range, about 240 kilometers or 150 miles west of Kabul, and in the past, it was part of the Silk Road. That means anyone traveling from China to Iran or from India to Central Asia probably passed through here. During the Buddhist era, about 1,500 years ago, this area was one of the largest centers of Indian Buddhism in Central Asia, and statues were built there. Later, with the spread of Islam, the statues no longer had religious significance, but they remained as cultural and tourist attractions. But Bamiyan's main fame comes from its two giant Buddha statues, the Great Western Buddha, about 55 meters or 180 feet tall, and the smaller Eastern Buddha, about 38 meters or 125 feet tall, which were built between the 6th and 7th centuries AD. Unfortunately, in 2001, the Taliban blew up both statues, and this event became one of the greatest cultural tragedies of the 21st century. But besides the statues, a network of carved caves in the heart of the cliff, filled with wall paintings, has given this cliff a soul. These paintings and the art of Bamiyan are a blend of Iranian, Indian, Greek, and Central Asian styles, and in a way, they've turned Bamiyan into an international museum carved into the cliff. Now, let's take a closer look at the smaller Buddha statue, or the so-called Eastern Buddha. Above its head, on the ceiling of the cave, there's a painting that has left archaeologists both amazed and puzzled for years. But what does the scene in this painting look like? Imagine looking up at the ceiling and seeing a sun god, probably Mithra, dressed in Tocharian clothing. You should know that the Tocharians were an ancient people who lived in a region called Tokharistan, which is roughly in northern Afghanistan and parts of what is now Central Asia. Their style of clothing usually included a long tunic with wide or medium sleeves, made from thick fabric decorated with geometric or floral patterns, a wide belt to fasten the garment, and tall leather boots. This type of clothing was a combination of military utility and aristocratic appearance, and was probably used in Bamiyan as a symbol of power and grandeur. Similarly, in this painting above the head of the small Buddha, the sun god is also dressed in Tocharian attire, holding a boot and a long spear in his hands. This god is riding a two-wheeled chariot pulled by 4 white horses, and 2 winged angels with helmets and shields, like mythical guardians, stand beside the chariot. Above all of them, wind gods are flying with shining scars. Around the scene, rows of kings, nobles, and even Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are seated. You should know that Bodhisattva in Sanskrit means a being who has embarked on the path to enlightenment. Let me tell you, Sanskrit is an ancient Indo-Aryan language whose roots go back to the Indo-European branch. So these are people who have reached higher stages of enlightenment and can enter nirvana. But in practice, they postpone this in order to help other beings achieve liberation. In fact, you could say these individuals are spiritual heroes or compassionate saviors in Buddhism. In short, this painting is a strange combination. It's like Zoroaster, Buddha, and Greco-Roman art all sat down together and said, "How about we do a joint project?" Jokes aside, why is this so unusual? Because in Indian Buddhist art, or Gandharan art, which refers to the art of the ancient land of Gandhara, now parts of northern Pakistan and eastern Afghanistan, you don't find such a busy and symbolic combination. Instead, here we can clearly see the cultural influences of the Silk Road. Influences like the symbol of the sun god from ancient Iran, Greece, or India. The style of clothing and weapons comes from Central Asia. The winged angels, reminiscent of Greco-Byzantine art, and the presence of Buddhas, which ties the center of the story to Buddhism. Maybe you could say that similar examples can only be seen in the Kizil and Dunhuang caves in China. But there's an interesting point about the age of the work. It's interesting to know that the construction of the small Buddha was done between the years 544 and 595 AD, but stylistic dating and tests indicate that the ceiling paintings were probably added several centuries later, up to the 8th century AD, which is about 1,200 to 1,300 years ago. So, we should consider this painting as a product of the peak of cultural exchange during the Hephthalite period, when present-day Afghanistan was a crossroads of civilizations. In fact, the Hephthalites were a confederation of nomadic tribes of Iranian and Tocharian origin who ruled over a large part of Central Asia, Afghanistan, and northern India from about the 5th century to the early 7th century AD. Their primary center of power was in the Bactria region and specifically around Balkh, and at their height, they controlled significant parts of the Silk Road. This is why the distinctive art and architecture of Bamiyan became a blend of Indian, Iranian, Greek, and Buddhist styles. As a result, the period when the small Buddha was constructed between 544 and 595 AD coincided exactly with the rule of the Hephthalites in the region. Some of the clothing and decorations in the Bamiyan paintings, like the Tocharian garments and boots, were likely influenced by Hephthalite culture. When Japanese and French experts returned to examine this ceiling after decades of photography, they realized that what they thought was just a layer of mineral paint was actually the oldest oil painting in the world. Yes, 1,200 years before Renaissance painters in Europe used oil techniques, the artists of Bamiyan had already invented oil paint. Now imagine, in the middle of the 7th century AD, inside a Buddhist cave, they were mixing pigments with walnut and poppy oil to make the colors more vibrant and long-lasting. So Bamiyan wasn't just a cultural crossroads. It was also a laboratory for artistic innovation. So where's the real shock? Most of the paintings were damaged when the Taliban blew up the statues. Although a large part of the paintings had already been lost over time due to moisture and erosion. Of course, I'm talking about the painting above the head of the small Buddha, the small god riding a chariot. Fortunately, the detailed photographs taken in the 1960s by the French archaeological team and later by the Japanese have survived. These images allow us to know exactly what this design looked like. This is where the controversial debate about reconstruction begins. In fact, after the destruction, two viewpoints emerged. Westerners, like some UNESCO experts, say that reconstruction should not be done and that it should remain as a historical record of destruction. But the Afghan government and local people say at least one of the Buddhas should be rebuilt because it's a symbol of cultural identity and attracts tourists. There were even strange ideas proposed, like a 3D hologram or building a new Buddha in the neighboring cliff. But when there's so much conflict, things definitely don't move forward smoothly. One of the foreign experts said, "We can build a completely new Buddha from scratch using ancient methods." And when I thought about it, I said, sure, we could even open a cafe on top so tourists can come, have coffee, and take pictures with the Buddha. But jokes aside, the idea of building an educational, demonstrative version could help preserve traditional skills and also give visitors a tangible experience. So why not? Some people say this painting symbolizes the Buddha's spiritual journey to the heavens. Others say it's a tribute to Mithra, Surya, or Apollo, blended with Buddhist traditions. For example, Mithra, sun and covenants in Iranian mythology, was associated with horses, chariots, and light. Also, the clothing and artistic style in this painting resembled depictions of Surya in Indian temples. In images of Apollo, the Greek sun god, symbols like horses, chariots, and winged creatures are also present. On the other hand, some Buddhist texts describe the sun as a symbol of enlightenment, truth, and awakening. From this perspective, the sun chariot can be seen as a metaphor for the mind's journey toward enlightenment. But I personally think this painting is more of a clever blend of mythology and politics. In other words, this painting was not just a religious work, but also a tool of cultural diplomacy. It's like saying we're all under the same sky, so let's live together peacefully, no matter our religion or culture. What do you think? Write your thoughts in the comments. Let's also discuss this together. If it were up to you, would you restore the small Bamiyan Buddha and its ceiling painting, or would you prefer to leave it in its ruined state as a reminder of the bitter moments in history? But the story of the painting above the small Buddha's head is not just about a colorful ceiling. This is the story of an idea's journey from Iran, India, and Greece along the Silk Road to a cave in Afghanistan. It also reminds us that even when cultures are different, they can come together to create a masterpiece. So maybe the most important lesson of this video is that cultural heritage isn't just about stone and paint, but about the stories and connections that form between people.